Okay, so we're gonna start recording this lecture for posterity so that everybody can share and enjoy it after. So without further ado, Julio de la Fuente, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Rafa. It's a pleasure to be with you today between Madrid and Seoul, like last year in September when we visit you in Seoul for the Biennale. And thank you, Rafa, for the invitation. We know each other since 2005.
Yeah.
It's a long story, different countries for Rafa, different countries also for me. And always we have a link, a personal link, but also a professional link, because we are both interested in the power of architecture to transform our cities, our village, our landscape. And this is a step beyond architecture, as many people can understand about buildings and artifacts. And yeah, and it's a pleasure to be with you. Thanks for the introduction. It's much better than I can say about myself and Natalia, and then that's all I can say about our office. It's perfectly describe what we are doing since the last 15 years. And the starting point of the lecture.
But 1 second, please, everybody, keep your microphones off. Everybody, please keep your microphones off while the lecture is happening.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, then the starting point of the lecture, Rafa commented me about our topic, and your topic is more or less the same, the urban transformation of the cities and the relation with architecture. And we started with our last book, in which Rafa is also a collaborator. And this is a kind of a spin-off book about our research with the city of Madrid for the Biennale. When we in this Biennale, we try to find a new economic model, a new productive model for the city of Madrid. We invited the city of Brussels and Vienna, that they are working since last years with these new policies about productivity. And this is the second book commissioned by the city about this topic. The goal for the city of Madrid with that topic, that book, is to change the policies, to change the vision and the perspective about the industrial activities in the city. And what our answer was to create an operational atlas. It's a compendium of case studies of different countries and different cities, and with a series of conclusions. But what is interesting for us is the structure of the book regarding our lecture, because we are started with a sequence of geographic parallels with this is collaborating cities. And what is interesting is that we divide the art of the urbanism in different parts, from the most soft and abstract realm of the urbanism of our activity to the most concrete and most hardware of this sequence. Then we start working with urban debates, economic models, very soft and invisible ways of transforming the city, policies, planning, and after that, infrastructures, landscapes, morphologies, typologies, and prototypes. And after that, we start working with different cities and the case studies, depending on the intensity of the market. Because if you want to include new productive activities, you have to battle, you have to fight with the housing industry. And the intensity, the price of the land is something very important to compare different case studies. Also, we introduce the idea of innovation, programmatic innovation uses as, as a line to work and to identify the connections in between these case studies, and also how they can be evolved during the time, throughout the time. Then today, we would like to focus and to anchor five different projects. One complete project, three projects in progress, under development, one under construction and two under development at the office, and one competition, finalist competition in London. And then we start with infrastructures, after that landscape, morphologies, typologies, and we will finish with prototypes and how this this kind of attitudes can transform our territories. Our first example will be our proposal for low-lying London. We were shortlisted with other four teams for the final round, and competition organized by RIBA. And what we proposed, it's a circular low line. It's a little bit paradoxical how to transform a line in a circle, but it was our proposal. And we use a programmatic development of all these infrastructure in London to intensify and densify the use of the bolts under the elevated railway line. This is the picture of our proposal, and we wanted to create a new circular environment
Julio,
where along
parece que no estás poniendo las fichas.
Ah, ¿no? ¿No está pasando?
No.
¿Tú las ves?
No. Veo tu pantalla que dice Hanyang G-dlF.
Ah, no? Sorry. I thought I was sharing my screen. Okay.
Ahí está.
Okay.
Ahora sí.
Sorry. Yeah, then just I will review very fast about the new book, this operational atlas for the city of Madrid, where Rafa is collaborating. And this is the matrix in which the book is anchored. This is geographic parallels with these invited cities and these kind of attitudes and tools to transform the city from software with urban debates, economic models, politics, planning, infrastructures, landscape, morphologies, typologies, and prototypes. And it's a sequence from software to hardware to realize about the attitudes of other cities to transform the productive city. We include this variable about the intensity of the market, the price of the land, the level of a degree of innovation, programmatic innovation, and how they can work throughout the time. And then we create this constellation of case studies where the new economic model for the city of Madrid could be implemented. And today we will explain 5 of our projects of these categories, from infrastructures to prototypes, to show different ways to transform the city. The first one, as I commented you, is the transformation of a line in a circular environment. This is low line London. The competition was about the transformation of 8 kilometers at the inner city. And this is the final view. And we wanted to create a series of links, hubs, interface, new centralities, and a programmatic development of this circular industry under the railway, elevated railway lane. It was the main diagram to creating a circular environment. And this is the no-end process where consumers became producers and distribution is a part of this chain. And the new distances are really short, and we can really create a new economy thanks to new technology, new energy, a new value of the local, the local production, new skills, a new understanding of the urban phenomena and the ecological realm about carbon footprint, etc. This is really anchored in a social shift in the urban environment. And what we propose is this kind of programmatic development in the vaults in close connection with the this space in between existing fabric and this urban barrier, because these are obsolete spaces, no manned land, and we want to turn the city towards this infrastructure, and this new public space can arise in connection with this programmatic vault. That's our proposal. We also include the use of the technology to activate this kind of devices. It could be the first starting point to activate the low line. They can be on the open space and they can be storage. This is the reason of this safe, because they can be storage on the vaults. And it was a prototype to transform this infrastructure in a short term. And this is, it was about the atmosphere and about the economy along these 8 kilometers, and how it could include inclusive jobs for all people, because along the 8 kilometers of low line, there are very different tissues from very expensive areas of the city, and others are not so expensive, worker class. And it tried to merge all these 8 kilometers, try to create an inclusive model for the city. The next topic is about the landscape, how landscape can be the main driver to transform a new urban area. This is a project we are developing just now at the office. It's the secondary school and sports facilities for an educational campus in the city of Chemnat in Bayern, Germany. And this is the plot in which we are landing. You can see here the campus and our plot. And we anchor our proposal in the existing values, existing topography and natural values, and this eco corridor with this water course. Also integrating all biotopes and existing natural values in our building. Our proposal includes a housing quartier, a new boulevard for the whole campus, and the new school is composed of 2 buildings attached together by a topography. It's a kind of plinth integrated in the landscape, also with some part of the program. And that's the power of the landscape together with architecture to transform a campus. Also supported by the new valorization of the small river. This is the floor plan. You can see very well how our building with this shape in the roof with the circular patios, it's really integrating in the topography, taking the same level than the street and creating a plinth. And this is, in our opinion, a good example of how landscape can transform city and landscape as a device for urban transformation. This is the model of the competition. I cannot show you more information because we are now just we go further than concept design, and we are now in DD, in this phase of the development, and the construction will start soon, in the middle of next year in Chemnat. This is another project. This is our example for morphology. This is a project we are now developing in Madrid, very close to our home after many years working in between Madrid and Germany. This project is really 2 kilometers far from our home. And this is the new transport complex and headquarters for Metro de Madrid. Metro de Madrid is the company, public company for transport and for the management of the metro. And this is the site of it's the former industrial set for the reparation of the trains from the 60s. And it was an enclave in a worker class neighborhood. It was a platform in one level, really disconnected from the topography of the surroundings. You can see this wall on the right side. And it was really an enclave and a big obstacle for the urban porosity in this neighborhood. And then when we started, we won the competition, and it was an opportunity to open up this block and connect again after 60 years, connect again this plot with the city. As you can see in the diagrams, we are proposing a clear morphology, redefining the streets, the north and south streets, creating a garden in the middle. It's called Jardín Uno, like the complex of companies we are working on this called Jardín Uno. And this could be a new garden for the city. And also we create a link, a yellow link, a passage to connect both sides of the neighborhood, north and south, through our plot. And then it's a porous morphology with a clear structure to define the big shape of the plot, at the same time that to allow the connection in between different tissues disconnected during years. The other main topic is about circularization. As we talk economic circularization in low line, here circularization is focused in the integration of this catalog of existing industrial elements existing in the site, and we create an industrial park in the middle, reusing this kind of components. Also, we rescue these components from other industrial sites from Metro de Madrid to maintain the identity of the company and the identity of the former activity with a circular approach. This is what I commented you about connections. For us, it was really one of the drivers to open the block to the city. And then this morphology was the most useful device for that, and one of the reasons that we won the competition. This is a picture from the competition with the industrial park. Also, the shape of the seats, the industrial metallic seats, sets, sorry, it was one of the drivers for the step roofs and the shapes of the section to be integrated and to dialogue also with the past. This is a section of this garden when the water cycle is having in account, and we avoid to have parking under the park. It seems logic, but it's not easy. When you are in the city, you have to deal with cars. Although you are Metro de Madrid public transport company, but you have to include some of them. And it was a red line for the competition to preserve the water management under the park. And this is something also has to be with Seoul, with your city, that you have tons of underground infrastructures. Rafa well known about that. And the cycle of water is really a new topic nowadays, and it would be more and more important next years. And this is a picture of the garden and how we maintain this industrial heritage in combination with a new program. The program is about museum, offices, and technological center to manage all the infrastructure. The floor plans perhaps today is not the day to focus in architecture. It's more the power of architecture at the urban scale and how the building works as zero energy building, the model from the competition and picture from last week. We have every Wednesday site supervision, and this is the first step. Also, it's very important when you look to the floor plan that the project, the morphology can be developed by steps. This is nowadays with new economical environment. This is something very useful. New morphologies to be implemented in different steps because money is coming in another way in Europe than 10 years before, and and to design the process from the beginning is something crucial to make the projects implemented. That's something for last 20 years, but now is more necessary than ever. This some pictures from last week of the first building, the headquarters of Metro de Madrid. This was the former boundary of the complex, and in the next steps, it would be permeable boundary with the new complex. And from this part of the neighborhood, from the north part, you could reach the garden, you could cross with the passage to the other side. And this is a picture of the elevated gardens. Today, other day, we can comment about the program and how we manage the section of the building and the new trends about working spaces. Okay, our next example is about typologies, how we invented new typologies for the urban regeneration of the inner city of Seoul in Germany. This is the implementation of Europan 9. We won 2008, and we finished the implementation 2015. We at the beginning we designed a process to be implemented over time because Seoul is a shrinking city. This is a line of our process with all the landmarks during time and how the project was really, the strategy was really robust to maintain the process alive during time, because it was not only important to trigger the first implementation. This is really important, but the other main point is to maintain alive the process to the political changes, to the economical changes, etc. And then in this term, every strategy must imagine the process over the time. This is the city of Seoul. It's a shrinking city. As you know, shrinking cities are cities that are losing population. Population is aging. There is a lack of employment, and young people, they are leaving cities for big cities. They are changing these small cities for big ones for new opportunities. This is a phenomenon about the post-industrial age in the 90s, when all the porcelain industry of the city broke down and the production was moved, and the city suddenly started to decrease, to shrink, and they try many devices to fight against that. And one of the ideas was to ask Europe and this big think tank, this big European platform of exchange of ideas and implementations, to they ask for an answer, because at that time there were not receipts about the shrinking cities. We learned together with the city of Seoul and European about how to deal with the shrinking cities, and after 7 8 years of process, we really learned a lot. That's what we found when we arrived to the city. The program from the city, this was the site, and the program was about new facilities for elderly people. And we proposed this strategy composed of different programmatic stripes focus on elderly people, and you can see after how it evolved in the process. The project was anchored in four main strategies. The first strategy was to consolidate the perimeter of the blocks to redefine the street. And if the street is, you have the streetscape, you have an urban feeling, and you can concentrate all the activities at the core of the city. And it was our first approach to densify the perimeter and to redefine the street. The second one was to increase the activity in the interior of the blocks, creating hubs, shared spaces, and social hubs. Thanks to the porosity of the blocks, we connected one block with the other thanks to passage and bridges and really porous fabric. The new fabric is really porous. Our third approach was to create a catalog of really specialized stripes, uh, working on the time. The first stripe, for example, in top on the left, it's just very mm, low cost stripe to be added to the existing buildings to improve the mobility and the accessibility for the existing houses for elderly people. And during time, you can add these stripes with new facilities and new residential programs. And at the end of the process, you can um consolidate this front street with these specialized stripes by simple addition. It was the plot of the competition, and finally, it was the plot of our first implementation. Just have in mind this elevation because this is it was the first implementation project some years after this competition. And as I commented, it worked well on over time because a shrinking city has no density, has no positive economic growth, and you have to deal with a low rhythm of densification. Also, we learned about the meaning of prosperity, that prosperity is not always related with growing. And this is one of the big lessons we learned during that last decade, that there are a lot of models of urban prosperity. And we started the implementation process together with Europan and the city of Seoul, and we changed totally our strategy about population. Instead of focusing on elderly, we decided that to fight against shrinkage, we should focus our efforts in the low part of the population pyramid. And then we create a program for babies, kids, teenagers, and young families. And also the synergies with the existing elderly people at the city. But because if we want to change the trend of the population pyramid, we need to go just to the base of this pyramid. And then after this, we did three implementations, acupuncture projects with big impacts. Why they have big impacts? Because, for example, in our first building, this is the plot of the competition. This is a facility for kids and babies. It's called Haute der Tagesmutter. After the construction of this building, the neighbors of the street, they painted and they refurbished their homes because they felt that the city and the government, they were doing things for them and for the street. And then suddenly the street changed a lot after the construction of this building. Also, this is acupuncture because with this passage under the metallic permeable bridge, we create a new gate, a new qualification of the interior part. And then it was a small building, but with a big impact in the surroundings. This is a small building with this strong urban effect. As Jaime Lerner started thinking about acupuncture strategies in Brazil, and it's a good example. This is the first building just in the site of Europan, and it's just this part of the model. You can see here the relation with the streetscape and how we integrate in the streetscape with the volumes, traditional volumes from Bayern, and but with a new reading of the context, integrating in the context, but with a new decoding in a new way the complex context. This is the power of the passage. The passage is another topic is present in all of our projects. Small links are really strong. You saw in the project of Metro how this passerelle can have a big impact. And in this case, it's not a passerelle, it's a small passage, but you can connect two sides of the city because the block is continuous. This is a big block, 150 long meters, and you can only pass from one side of the city to the other through this passage. And then this is something very important, and we will see in other projects. This is the origin of the program. It's a kind of new educational program where the mothers take care of the kids in their own houses. But this is a new building for this traditional program. There are not so many new buildings for this program, and this is one of the reasons we had to invent a new typology. This is how it works, and the feeling inside of these really specialized stripes, like in the competition, just connections, playground, etc. The second one, it's like the big brother of this. This is same strategy, just at the heart of the city of Seoul. And in origin, it was a project for young people and a youth hostel. The youth hostel wanted to bring new young people to the city, to bring new possibilities to existing teenagers of the city to have exchanges, not leaving the city, but bringing them the city from outside to the city. Now they change, and this is also an intergenerational center. Then it's more or less in the goal from the beginning. It's a mix of a programmatic mix, and the strategy of the stripes became a very flexible device in future for transform the building. Even during the use of the building, they are making changes, and now a small young families are living in the youth hostel. Same strategy of the stripes, very flexible strategy to accommodate to the slope of the street, like in the other project. In this case, they are really flexible to be adapted to the complex geometry of the plot. Yeah, another point about urban regeneration, the selective demolition. This is, you have to act without nostalgia, of course, preserving the values, but you need to make room for new inputs to the inner city. And then we decide to demolish these existing buildings to make new room for this new program. And again, this typology with these stripes was really useful to be integrated in the local landscape. At programmatic level, it's about two programs joined together for a magic box. It's a big party room to mix local and translocal people coming from abroad. And this is really the heart of the building, and a permeable space for the exchange. In this case, this is our passage. This is a closed, cover passage, but it's connecting the street with the court, and through this a common program. This is the section of this so-called magic box by ourselves. And our third project itself is so different. It's housing project, but we follow same strategy. It was the result of a first prize in an invited competition from the government of Bayern. It was included in a program of housing interventions in shrinking cities, and they choose Selp as one of the shrinking cities. And we work with the topography, and we recover a small stream to connect both sides of the inner city, Obere Bergstrasse with the inner city. Also, we create a common square with the youth centrum, our previous project, and we create a new public space in front of the housing access and the youth centrum access. And this is another kind, it's in between typology and morphology, and we create the same. We wanted to create this big level of porosity in the new fabric. It was the model from the competition. This is the stream that we recovered. It was a channel before our intervention, and we tried to recover this piece of nature in the plot as the connector in between two levels of the inner city. This is the upper level of this passage, going down to the inner city. It's a private property, but we open up to be a public passage. And again, in terms of programs, it could be another lecture about housing and how the intermediate space, that the shared space, are working just in front of your door with these orange common areas for the winter, and how it's a kind of gradient of privacy from your door to the communal gardens. But I think this is not the day to talk about these housing programs. And this is the idea of these intermediate spaces in between the blocks and the first shared space after the door. Nowadays, this is absolutely colonized by bicycles, kids, furniture for leaving the zoos there, watching the football, etc. And it's really working. This is a picture, yes, before people living there, and but now it's working more or less like this, and nowadays more and more transform. And it was our experience in Self about the working with these new typologies. And yeah, and we arrived at, we review how the infrastructures can work. We saw how the power of the landscape. Also, we review the morphology with the metro project. After that, we review the power of these new typologies as urban acupuncture with big effects to transform a shrinking city. And in many of these cases, the urban regeneration is the common topic on them, except the educational campus. This is really a new campus, a new intervention in a new land. But the common thing in between the others and the next one in Brussels is we are working with the city. The substance is the city, the citizens, the connection in between different fabrics. And we saw how the morphologies can be very useful, the typologies, and now the prototypes. This is one competition we won recently in the city of Brussels. Just at the heart of the city, in the neighborhood of Marollen, in the street Haute, 275. This is an emblematic street of the city. It's close to the Justice Palace and close to this big Platz in the top left. This is a mark, open air mark, traditional mark. and we have to open up this big block. Again, we are dealing with the big block. This is full of buildings. The perimeter is full. This is a palimpsest. You can read the layer of the story. The big building in the middle of the plot is the school of the neighborhood, but it was the former train station of the neighborhood, and now it's the school, and it's full of infills, exist houses. There is another library in the middle of the block, and the competitions organized by the Bouwmeister and the city of Brussels ask for intensifying the block instead of looking for new plot at the boundary of the city. They want to continue intensifying this block with a complete mixed use program. This is the plot, and the program is divided in the competition is what divided in three parts. The first one, they wanted to use the sport hall of the school to open the sport hall to the city, to the neighbors in the afternoon after the school schedule. Second one, they want to create a social housing infills. Then you need to create a passage in between the street and the interior sport hall together with the houses. Also, they wanted common facilities and the new playground of the school. And we propose a new component for this mixed use scheme. We propose a workshop, a small productive space in relation with the past of the neighborhood. This is a neighborhood, traditional neighborhood for craftsmen and small workshops. And this is one of our innovative additions to the competitions. And they like it. They accept that it could be really a rich mixed use scheme with this productive workshop. This is the plot as is it today, and our proposal is colonizing this warehouse in the left side and creating elevated buildings, creating a passage under the buildings for housing. This is the the block with the complex and dense block with the public facilities, and the red boundary is the plot of the project. And we work with the idea of the passage and attaching to the passage different shared spaces, the pavilion for the sport hall, spaces for the bikes, winter gardens, the new court, playground for the school. And we work with this idea of the urban passage, and also with the idea of a three-dimensional ping pong. These new facilities are organized in different levels because of the complexity and the density of the existing site. We must create a three-dimensional network of common facilities, as you can see in these sketches about the section and the public spaces and programs. And also we had to deal with a complex layer of connectivity because during the schedule of the school, you cannot stay in the court of the school, but they don't want people crossing the space of the houses after the school, but they need independent access for the sports hall at the same time than for the facilities, because probably the winter garden and the workshops will be rent to other people, not people living in the houses. And it was really simple, but really complex. It was the title from the Baumeister office to this competition, simple and complex. And it was like it was simple and complex. And nowadays we are developing this project. We are in an intermediate step, and this is really as it is. Our partners from Ghent maker, and we are really fighting for every centimeter in a strategy we call urban judo, because we are fighting for every centimeter in this project. This is the section from the competition. It's not changing very much from the competition. You can see all this blue green kind of common and soft architectural building connecting all the programs. You can even see this workshop in the mezzanine. This is one of our innovations to the program of the competition. And this is also interesting for you that Rafa also is doing competition, and this is one of the ways to get competitions, and innovation must be always in your mind, because we propose a new program here and it was well accepted. Sometimes it's not, but I think we have to be critic with the brief always. And the big example is Rem Koolhaas in the competition of the Congress Center in Cordoba, in Spain. They consider, this is really well known in Spain, they consider that the plot, the site chosen by the city for the Congress Center was wrong. And they proposed to do the building in another site. And this is the word of competitions. Of course, you have to follow the brief, but also you must be critic with the brief, because we can add things with the new eyes from outside. And this is what we did with this small addition for the workshop, to create really a mixed scheme for this building. This is the model for the competition, and this is our blue green armature. This is a prototype, but at the same time, this armature could be understand as a infrastructure, and everything is really mixed here. It's a small infrastructure. This is this prototype. Of course, we are creating a new typology with this scheme, and of course, we are completing an existing morphology with these infills. At the end, from infrastructure to typology, they are all connected. I split in these categories to be clear and to work with the scheme of our latest book. But in fact, the richness of these projects, in our opinion, is that these strategies are really cross one each other, and they are creating new economic models. They are dealing with small infrastructures, etc. And this is the scheme, a three-dimensional scheme, how these residential units are attached to the complex. We create a micro universe for dwellers and many spaces for exchange, for interaction. If in the project itself we create this urban passage to the interior park, here we are creating this three-dimensional neighborhood. This is you can meet people, take care of your vegetables on the roof, meet somebody in the way to your home. And this is what is really rich of this project, that we are creating a micro community, densifying the block, but creating a high level of intensity. This is the other issue from this project, that you can create big levels of intensity with not so big efforts in terms of density, and understanding density in a very nice way. We like to understand density as the number of possibilities you have to meet other people. And this is the link in between intensify and densify. And that's what we try to do with our projects, to create these platforms, these infrastructures, to allow people to exchange, living together. Because with COVID, we realized that about the paradox of we are locked down in our cells, in our residential units during the worst days of the lockdown. But at the same time, we have a need to create a micro universe in the surrounding of our house. For 1 month in Madrid, we can only move 1 kilometer around our house, and we have this mobile application. You went for a walk with the mobile because you know that your universe during 1 month was 1 kilometer, and then this is an impulse for the polycentric city. But if you go to the extreme polycentric city, this is the city of 1 kilometer pandemic city, and that's something related with this project in Brussels. We are trying to create a micro city in this small and narrow plot as a resonance of this polycentric city. It's a cascade of centralities. At the end point of this cascade of centralities is the residential realm. But not only the bedroom and the living room, but also how this living room can be expanded to the neighborhood. These are some views of this passage and this community, this narrow and complex plot, also in close relation with the school. And just we want to finish with this view of the street. As you can show the plot before with the first peak. And this is what we are working nowadays with this urban project, simple and complex. And yeah, and that's we try to organize this lecture in these categories, but at the end, what we like is to talk about post-COVID cities, about density, about polycentric models, nature, biotopes, etc. And I think we can discuss now, if you want, many points out of this project.
Okay, well, thank you so much. That was very exciting and great to see. So we're going to open the floor for questions from the audience. Anybody is welcome to ask anything. Also, you are welcome to type your question if you feel like not doing it verbally. So yeah, first of all, I want to say that the whole body of work, even though you're structuring it in morphology, infrastructure, landscape, morphologies, typologies, prototypes, at the end, it's all one project. And I think the key word that you keep on mentioning is the urban acupuncture, which you mentioned the most in the cell projects. But overall, I think the whole body of work is about urban acupunctures, and you're just modifying the scale, right? So even in the London low-line scale, the infrastructural scale, that's still, you're looking at how to produce this urban acupuncture at the scale of the city of London, while in Seoul, you're looking at the urban acupuncture at the scale of a neighborhood. And the interesting thing is that it seems that you're developing this language of understanding what are the microcosms that you need for each situation. So I think your conclusion is actually the key element to understanding your projects. It's how to develop these micro worlds, how to develop these unique densities that work as little. I mean, currently we're working with the topics of islands, but yeah, what you're creating is these micro worlds, right? they're self-contained economies, but at the same time, they produce a ripple effect onto the larger urban scale. Would you think that's a fair assessment of your projects, or?
Yes, that's exactly what we try. Sometimes you are not so aware of that when, but you need to put together your projects and to have input from outside. But it's true that we are trying to decode the logics of the sites to create this microcosmos and make them to work. I think to decode the logics, it needs a previous hard work to anchor this microcosmos in the context.
Right.
Because
the interesting thing is that in Seoul, at least the research that we're doing here is understanding the overall city as a collection of independent islands. Because of the scale of Seoul, you end up having these conditions that entire blocks work like their own microcosm. So it's very autonomous settings, one from another. But in your case, these microcosms actually want to form links with the rest of the city. They don't want to work independently. I mean, they're still independent microcosms, but I think the idea of, I mean, you keep on mentioning the passage, right? And these are just urban links that produce the microcosm as a catalyst, but also as a connection to other microcosms. So I think overall you're building this urban network.
yes, that's exactly what is it. We are really worried about perhaps we are obsessed about the linking different urban fragments and the porosity of the fabrics, and this is in different ways. It's in all the projects.
So what do you think? Because you're ending now with the post-COVID. Well, we're still within the COVID-19 situation, but we're still can hypothesize about the post-COVID situation. That the idea of decentralization, distribution, compartmentalization, so separation, right? The separation of people, this social distancing. Do you think that that's going to have an effect on the way that you envision these micro worlds of densities and intensities and linkages?
Yes, I think the example of Brussels is going in that way. I think the scale of the complexity must be reduced to the small scale, and to reduce the scale of the network. You are talking about these islands in Seoul, but if you reduce the scale of the islands and reinforce the network, you can paradoxically work in two worlds: the level of the city, but also the level of the pandemic of your
of
world.
Of your 1 kilometer radius.
Yes, that's your cosmos. And I think this is something we are realizing. And also the accessibility to nature. We were invited by magazine Bauwelt to write an article about the public space in Madrid after COVID. And we choose a passage, the picture of a passage under the highway in front of our house, because this passage is connecting our neighborhood with a natural park. But the landscape of this passage is awful, as people can understand, as a passage. We love them, this passage, but they were not used by nobody because it was out of the neighborhood. They oriented the neighborhood towards the shops, the interior gardens. But after the COVID, this passage under the road are the meeting point for the teenagers, because they can have direct.
So that's why you're hanging out there with the teenagers. So are you saying that there's a different way of understanding from an introvert neighborhood to now the idea of extrovert connections to the natural landscapes and bringing nature.
Yeah, yeah, of course. In the boundary of Madrid, there is a new relation with the other side of the infrastructures. Even if this is agricultural land and you have a small path to go with the bike, but there is a revalorization of the empty spaces in the city at urban level in the dense city, but also in the periphery. And you need to, I think the cities must should make a mapping of these new realities to to introduce in the catalog of public spaces of the city,
So
because
now you're
they are
saying that
now.
there's a new emergence of new typologies of public spaces.
Yes, yes, that's totally, because the our threshold to accept the what everybody understands as quality of public space is now reduced. We can spend the whole evening in under the highway if we are in contact with nature, and then our threshold is totally reduced. We have other scale of priorities, and I think these new thresholds, new accessibility, should have a resonance in the policies very soon.
So the transition from large scale plazas to micro scale, let's say, infrastructural appropriations. Do you think that the idea of that, the big scale collective has to be broken down?
Yes, that's exactly what we are trying to do during the last years. And this is something very useful to break down the scale, uh, or at least to create smaller scales, and to create a gradient of contacts in between the door of your house and the public space. And this gradient is very rich. You can find a lot of situations, new spaces, and the COVID is triggering these new spatialities.
Hmm.
We saw, for example, on TV, the elderly homes, how the relatives talk with the residents, with the elderly people, towards the fence of the complex. And now the fence of the complex, this line, it's the space for the exchange, and this is a line that should be should take in account in the design of the future elderly facilities. How is the potential of this line? Is this line, or this line, it's a boundary of 10 meters wide,
Yeah.
and this is a new spatiality, and uh, it's a sequence of thresholds, in our opinion.
And well, before we keep on monopolizing this conversation, I want to give the chance to the audience. If anybody has a question, please feel free to ask. Anybody? Again, if you want to type it as well, you can type it and then I can ask it for you. Yep.
I don't know, Rafa, if you are working now in a specific project in your unit, or you are researching about something.
Well, well, for this specific class, let's say, we're just investigating the condition of islands in Seoul and these microcosms that are not so micro because of the scale of Seoul, right? So you end up having blocks that are 800 meters by 800 meters. If you compare that to a block in Madrid, right? That's an entire but that's how it operates, that you have these mega blocks or large scale blocks that separate themselves from the rest, and because of their scale they end up being um, working autonomously, right? So I think the ideas that you bring about breaking down the scale could be introduced into Seoul. Like, how do you manage these large scale 20 million people city with mega blocks? How do you break it down to the scale of um, a community, or actually what is the scale that you were experiencing in Brussels in that last project? What is the perimeter? Is that like a 100 meter by 100 meter condition, or?
Yes, that's some a little bit more. It's a little bit bigger.
Mm-hmm.
But what you say, I have two reflections about what you say, because in Europe we have the Cerda
Mm-hmm.
block, the 113,
Uh-huh.
and now there is a new idea from Barcelona to create the super blocks. You know?
Yeah, with a 15-minute city,
Yeah.
and do 300 meters by 300 meters.
Yes.
So, well, not 300, but like linking three of the Cerda blocks, 3 by 3, which ends up being like around, yeah, like 300 meters by 300 meters, which is still not even half of a Seoul block, right? So,
Yes. You have to as you say, you have to multiply the cascade of scales
mm,
uh, with your scale, because it's a very huge. But also this is the scale we are working in Europe. Blocks of 150,
mm.
160 maximum, depending. But and this is the new idea to free of cars
Yeah,
in
and
a
have the
collection
super block,
of different
right?
blocks. And the other paradox in our experience about the shrinking cities and your growing population in Seoul and the scale, are you growing, right?
Well, that no, that's the contradiction, though, that it's a growing urbanity, but actually the population is going to shrink. It's a super age society that within the next 30 years, about 40% of the population is going to be over the age of 65. So yeah, imagine a city that almost half of the people are over 65, and it's going to decrease because of the decreasing birth rate. So it's going to go from within the administrative boundary from 10 million to 9 million people, right? So, and yeah, out of those 9 million, everybody's going to be single. Half of them are going to be old. So it's a very, yeah, like
Yeah,
what do you do in the city of retired people and,
yeah. But the big advertisement of the shrinking cities is that less can be better,
hmm,
and a new model of progress without growth. And
hmm,
I really think that also the prognosis says that the balance in the world, it would be an average of zero growth in
hmm.
future. Next 50 years, we will arrive to the zero growth for the world, with the balance of shrinkage and super growing areas. And my other reflection, Rafa, is about the theory of islands
Hmm,
from Oswald,
hmm.
because it was an exercise about urban islands for a Berlin scenario of shrinkage.
Yeah, I mean, since we're looking at islands, that's obviously one of the main references that we've discussed, the Unger's Berlin Islands. The issue that I have with that one is that I mean, that's coming from a shrinkage out of a war, right? So it's a war-torn Berlin. So it's not a population decrease because of lack of industry or those things. It's a different type of shrinkage, I would say. And that one is coming out of the remains of a city, rather than, well, actually, what were you going to mention before I cut you off? But
No,
sorry.
that we were. focusing the discussion about the blocks,
Uh-huh.
because our examples are more architectural than landscape approach. But because of your students, I want to focus also in the connections between the blocks, because this is about the theory of islands. In an extreme vision of Berlin, they create these green corridors with a wild landscape
Mm.
of abandoned urban tissue, and that's what is interesting for me. Forget for 1 minute a little bit the blocks, and have a look to the connection in between blocks.
Mm-hmm.
What's the model in Seoul? Because the ecological model also about the resources, the mobility, and, and I think this is really linked with the policies of the city. I
Mm.
know that in some terms you are exemplar in Seoul, and this is also, I think it's half and a half. How what's happened with the blocks, but the other half is what is happening with the links, because the links will be about kilometers.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the thing. Even within the subway, you're saying that you have a 10-minute radius from a subway station here, but just getting out of the subway takes like 10 minutes because the stations are so big. So the links between blocks are yeah, it's quite a, I would say that's the challenge here.
Yeah. Because
So
Rafa,
yeah.
in one article we did about the resilience some years ago, we had example of Dubai,
Mm-hmm.
that they are depending of the air traffic to get people from all around the world. But if the air traffic has any problem, like a volcano, like the
Mm-hmm.
COVID, the Dubai economy can
Collapses.
can collapse. And it happened a little bit with your metro, because if for a pandemic you cannot use metro,
Everybody's
the
stuck.
the distances became non-human.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then it's really about your 1 kilometer radius.
Yes.
So any questions from the audience? Anybody out there that's having some doubts on these interesting topics of the breaking down the scale, the passage, the links, the aging society, which, as Julio just mentioned, Selb was a perfect case study for that. The shrinking city of an aging society. Did you experience, while you were in Seoul, did you experience that feeling that it was out of out of scale, or that it was these mega scales, or did you feel that it was walkable, or
Mm, we we thought that the activity, the hubs of activity were a little bit disconnected in our routine in
Mhm.
Seoul. Uh, but you can spend the day in these areas of activity. But they were a little bit disconnected one each other, and but I didn't have the feeling of a mega city.
Yeah,
I
I
I
think
remember
that.
I remember one of the days, and it's true, one of the days coming back from an event, and we start walking in the underground connections,
Mhm.
and we appear suddenly in the other corner of Seoul, and we lost the notion of time. And no, I didn't have the vision of a mega city.
Yeah, I think that's some, well, not not to say something to learn, but that's a model that comes out of the city of Seoul, that you don't feel the mega city because it's so big that you just work or you move around these sectors, around these islands, and there's enough activity in each of these islands that you that you can walk around that island itself and it feels walkable, but in reality, you're not going to walk from one island to the other, because then, yeah, that's the way beyond the human scale. But within each confinement, within each neighborhood island, let's say, it is pretty walkable and it doesn't feel like a mega city, but it's only when you try to go from one to the other that it's becomes.
Yes. And we found very rich situations inside the blocks. I
Yeah.
have in mind many areas, and you can feel very safe out of the cars lanes, crossing half of the city in between intermediate spaces.
So how do you feel, like, going back to this COVID thing, the infrastructural space, because also you're working with this notion of the infrastructural space, how is that going to play out as new public space?
Yeah, that then I have to say we there is now a very interesting competition in Barcelona about that, about the future of the mega infrastructures,
Mm-hmm.
with the new prognosis about the reduction of the private traffic next 20, 30 years. And
And then the
na-
transformation of the leftover lanes into public space, or what?
yes, yes, it's about the capability. The infrastructures will be able to move same amount of people, but in another way,
Hmm.
in a collective way, and then you will have a lot of space, and this is the moment for these new green corridors, eco connectors, landscape blue infrastructures, and and I think it's the moment for to think about the the joint in between the humans and non-humans. This is the moment to colonize these infrastructures and to meeting point with the nature. And I think this is the big opportunity to meet the nature
Hmm. Or
again.
to reintroduce nature back into the city.
Yes, I think this is the big opportunity. It's just also the new policies, and now I introduce something, even if it's in Spanish, but you
Mm-hmm.
can download the book, the atlas in which Rafa collaborates. You can download in our Instagram for free, and there is a chapter about policies, and this is really important because policies in Europe and in Seoul, also in Korea, we must reduce carbon footprint. We must reduce nitrogen levels and air pollution, etc. And then it will change the policies about traffic, and then new opportunities for this nature will arrive. And but everything started in policies.
Okay. Well, from your case, I think everything starts from the architecture, and then you make policies. Okay. So, are there any questions from the audience? If not, we're gonna wrap up. As you may have seen, Julio and Natalia have a very busy firm, and we're just lucky that they were able to take an hour and a half of their time to introduce their projects. So, any questions or last comments from anybody that's curious? Okay. All right, because okay, we're gonna wrap this up, and thank you so much for this wonderful lecture, and we really appreciate and wish you were giving it in person. But again, this is also another opportunity that COVID has given us, that it can link us in this way. So maybe next year we can bring you to Seoul again. But in the meantime, we were very grateful that you can take an hour from your time. And yeah, again, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Rafa. It was a big pleasure to have this time with you. you know, I learn with our exchange always, and
And
it's a pleasure. I know we spend a good time in Seoul, and just say thank you and good luck for this course with Rafa for everybody because he's really great. I can say for not so many people, but you are lucky to have Rafa with you because I know him last 15 years. I know his trajectory as in between academia and practice, and I really admire you, Rafa. Again.
thank you, but let's keep it about you. All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much. And if anybody has questions, they'll email me, and then I can forward them to you, and then we can hopefully keep this conversation going and keep on learning.
Okay. Thank you,
Okay.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.